Welcome to WooCommerce Live, Season 2, Episode 5. I'm Jonathan Wold. I lead community initiatives here at WooCommerce, and with me is my co-host, Noëlle Steegs, merchant turned developer who also volunteers here in the WooCommerce community. Always great to see you, Noëlle.
Good to see you too, Jonathan.
So we also have a fantastic guest joining us from the WooCommerce team a little bit later. We'll stick around for that. On today's episode, we're continuing our 8-part series focused on helping you go from idea to first customer. And as always, we'll start off with our community spotlight, looking at wins across the WooCommerce community and sharing a few of our favorite resources. And then we'll jump into today's topic. Noëlle, what are some of the wins we have to celebrate this week?
So first I want to give a shout out to Prabha from the community because he's been helping members with issues related to Woo and marketing specifically. But now I started blogging and making videos on his website, codechili.lk. And there's one that specifically stood out to me because he created this complete guide for connecting WooCommerce to your Facebook shop. Really in-depth, step-by-step, helping with troubleshooting issues, setting up the pixel, all of that.
Wow, this is fantastic.
Yeah, I really think, if somebody is struggling to set it up, I do know sometimes people bump into issues. I think this post is a really good one to have a look at.
Fantastic. Awesome. What else we got?
So next I want to share Galapot. It's a pet health store from James May and his wife. They're in the UK. And they shared that this year has been a tough year for them. And I had to create a new business. So they sell pet supplements and treats, and they will add their natural pet food line soon. And they said their launch with Woo is really seamless, and they're focusing on opening their first brick and mortar store now.
Wow, that's fantastic. These pictures.
Yeah, I love these. Yeah, they're very cute. And then coincidentally, there's another pet store that I want to share, but this one is in the States. And this is somebody who built it for his client, Ashley Pierce, and his client was the Health Dog Co. And he said that without any ads, they got their first 3 orders in 4 hours, which I think is really well done.
Wow. That's fantastic. I love how different the two sites are. Like they're very clearly focused on pets. They've got prominent pictures, the messages are clear, and there's a very unique style to each of them. So that's awesome to see.
Yeah, I love that as well.
Awesome. Man, so I know that you'll put up the post each week to ask, and I know you have to pick from quite a few different things. So there's so much stuff that's happening. It's great to see. We love seeing what people are making with Woo. So please continue to share with us, and we especially love to hear when you get your first customers. So meetups are continuing to happen around the world. They're still virtual at the moment, and if you're not already a part of a meetup, I would highly recommend that you join. If there's not a meetup in your area, you can also start one. We'd love to help you do that. The spotlight for this week's meetup is the meetup in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. It's my hometown. That's a tiny little thing, but we've got a great group that shows up each week. And we always welcome guests from around the world. So you're welcome to stop in and check out what's going on there. And if you're not already a part of a meetup, you can go to woocommerce.com/meetups and find a meetup in your area. Also wanted to give a quick announcement. So from time to time, the marketplace team they will do like special beta programs with partners. And we're doing a closed beta invitation right now with Instagram checkout and WooCommerce. So if you're a merchant or you know someone who's interested in experimenting with Instagram checkout, you can fill out this form and get on the beta invite list, and we'll have a link in the show notes for that. Awesome. And what about any favorite resources around the web, Noëlle?
So I want to make sure to share this one because I know many marketing budgets have been cut this year. And marketing was Neil Patel. He made this one that's just perfect to share. It's called 23 Amazing Online Marketing Tactics for Small Businesses with Low Budgets. So he mentions free tools and strategies, and he also explains how to minimize costs and how to stretch your budget and make it last. Really good post, this one.
Good, nice and timely too. That's fantastic.
And then the next one I would like to talk about is Yoko Cap. They create and sell eco-friendly bottles, caps, straws, and so on. And I definitely thought it was very smart to on the product category page for the cups. They have this thing where you can choose your size. It's interactive. You will know exactly like which one you need. So I think it's super clear for people to see, and their product photography is stunning. It's easy to see in the shop as well, like in what colors the cup in your size comes in. You know, it's just really easy and intuitive. I think they did a fabulous job on this.
Wow. Yeah, and another great example of something that looks quite unique. This might be just an issue with my internet on this side with the image not loading, but yeah, look at that. That's great photography and just a great custom display. So that's fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing those. So before we get started with today's topic, we want to bring our guest on screen. So Gareth, welcome to the stream.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Gareth.
Gareth
Hey,
Allison is a part of the WooCommerce marketing team. When you get some of the awesome emails that will come in from WooCommerce from time to time, Gareth is usually the guy behind the scenes making it happen. So Gareth, it's great to have you. You have been a part of the WooCommerce team for quite a few years now. Tell us a little about your origin story. Like, how did you first get involved with Woo?
Yeah, I've been around since the Woo Themes days, before Automatic, and I kind of got into the Woo Themes team mainly from emceeing WordCamps, actually, in Cape Town in South Africa. Did a couple of those. And
real quick, and for those of you who don't know, so WordCamps, so WooCommerce, of course, runs on WordPress. WordCamps are these events that take place, the community organizes, where folks will get together to talk about WordPress and open source stuff in general. So you have a long background in that.
yeah, so I know Jonathan often speaks about meetups on WooCommerce Live, and I guess WordCamps are kind of just bigger meetups, really, where those
pretty awesome
WordPress people get together and help each other and learn from each other. So that was kind of my in. I'd been using WordPress before that, and you know, I was doing front end development at the time, and they brought me on board. And you know, 6 years later, here I am. I'm still around, and I've expanded my abilities, and the things that I do from day to day have expanded dramatically.
That's awesome. So you do a lot of work with Woo. What are some of the things that you enjoy most about working in this world of WooCommerce?
Oh, such a good question. I get really excited when I see and hear stories about people that have, you know, especially in these times this year, we've had a lot of stories about folks that have changed their business models overnight and they've come online, and hearing and seeing stories where the software that we make has helped them either take their business to another level or just even have a business is incredibly inspiring. And it's one of the main reasons I love working with WooCommerce every day.
Oh man, just the stories. Yeah, I agree. Just some of the stuff that Noëlle and I go over week to week. It's like, oh man, it's so cool to see like people figuring things out and making progress with stuff and just getting themselves unlocked. So when you're not working with Woo, what are some of the things that you like doing for fun?
Music
Music
is pretty much my passion in life. And I was thinking about this, actually, completely unrelated, but I guess this ties into what we're talking about, like very much, you know, especially the WordPress and WooCommerce has a big DIY community feel about it. And I feel like music often has some similarities to it, right? You know?
Yeah.
WordPress and open source, kind of the democratization, it's making things accessible to people. And music is very much the same way. I'm self-taught on instruments, and currently I'm learning mixing and mastering and things like that. And there's so many. The community is a big thing around that, and the ability to make music now is easier than it ever has been.
Man.
In South Africa, you might know as well, Noëlle. South Africans are very resourceful, and music
Yes.
in our country, a blick guitar, which is people make guitars out of oil cans. They make their own instruments. Like,
Oh, wow.
It doesn't stop them from making music. I think in the US, there's the old broom stick with the string on, that kind of thing. And I feel like there's commonalities between making music these days and open source software, WordPress, things like that. So it's probably it's no surprise that those are the two things that I'm most interested in these days.
Man, I was up. So it was time to tuck my kids in bed last night, and my son, he'd been starting to work on a piano piece. He asked if he could play it for me. I'm like, of course. Yes, we're going to. He's got a little piano in his room. And then that led into like a 20-30 minute like riffing session where I was showing him some pieces on the piano, and he was showing me some stuff. And I was like, oh, it's so fun. He doesn't know this yet, but I bought him an ocarina, which is something that it's like a wind instrument from the Legend of Zelda game. And he's been asking for it for a long time. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get like instrument, like, yeah, instruments are amazing. And I think you're right. There is something about like this open source world and learning and figuring things out. It really lends itself well to the world of music. And when does your next album drop?
Well, at the moment we're in lockdown. I'm in Ireland at the moment, and we're in lockdown. And this is actually, I've already started making some more music. I think it's a good time to, let that extra time, use it for something positive and be creative. So maybe sooner than I even think, maybe next 6 months, you never know.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gareth. All right. So for this week's topic, last week, we of course have been, let me pull up our handy little illustration here. We've been going through this series from idea to first customer. And last week we talked about creating the product, and we just shared some examples of the types of things that people make. And there's so much awesomeness out there. And at this step in the process, now we find this is a really good time to settle in on, okay, what are you going to use to run all of this, right? Like, you've chosen your audience, you found a problem to solve, you sold it before you made it, you've made the product now. What are you going to use to bring it all together? And this is where what we call an operating system comes in. Now, many of you are familiar with the term, but let's not make any assumptions about it. The idea of an operating system is something, they're all around us, right? Anything that's technical is a good example, something that can be controlled. You have operating systems that run your phones, your computers, and an online store also needs an operating system. It's the software that lets you create and manage and sort of keep it running, right? And it's important that you pick an operating system that has the right capabilities, letting you, get the products up on your site, being able to manage it in the way that you need to manage it, that gives you the integrations that you need. Some operating systems could be too much. Some might not be enough for your use case. And they come in all sort of shapes and sizes, right? There's open source operating systems. WordPress is the most popular, and started out as a simple blogging tool. But at this point, WordPress is used to run all sorts of things. And e-commerce is a big category in WordPress, of which WooCommerce is what sort of comes in most prominently there. There's also proprietary operating systems, so not open source. They have their positives as well, things that they can do really well. And rather than having something of your own that you set up, it's kind of like you rent theirs. Shopify, Wix, Squarespace are all great examples of operating systems that are not available in open source, but have their own advantages. And you also have marketplaces that you could abstract out the need to have something yourself entirely, right? Like Etsy or Amazon. It's possible to run an entire business just using what they provide within the marketplace. So what we're going to do today is talk through some of the different factors in choosing an operating system. And then we'll talk a bit more about why you might want to choose Woo and WordPress at the end. But our hope here, there's a lot of this. It's an important decision to make, and it's not black and white. There's pros and cons to each. So in our experience, we want to talk through some of these factors and give you a starting point to help make a good decision. So Gareth, would you kick us off? What are some of the factors that we found it helpful for folks to consider when making a decision about the operating system they're going to use?
Yeah. So there's a couple of factors, like Jonathan mentioned, when you want to choose an operating system for your business. So you mentioned there's ownership versus renting. You got to consider flexibility. You're also going to want to consider scalability. And then finally, and this is kind of where our bias comes in, as Jonathan mentioned, you want to consider open web support. So those are the four main factors. So let's dig into those a little bit there. So when we say owning versus renting, what I mean by that is in regards to e-commerce is it generally means that you paid for your domain name and your hosting account, and that gives you full control over your site's content. You can pretty much create anything that you'd like. And for me, who recently moved into a flat or an apartment of my own, this is kind of relevant. So the analogy of owning or renting, right, can be best illustrated, I think, in terms of like a house. So when you buy a house, you can move in, you can paint the walls any color you like. You could put up all your Simpsons Funko Pops on the wall. You can add nail holes. You can tear down a wall. Maybe you want to make the whole place open plan. But when you rent, you're subject to your landlord's rules, and they can evict you. They can raise your rent. And if you want to do all that kind of stuff that I mentioned, all that customization, you probably are not going to be able to do it there. You'll have to move out and start over somewhere else and maybe repeat the process. Or, that's where ownership comes in. And when we think about the limitations in terms of an e-commerce store, it's probably, it's not putting up figurines on a wall. It's more things like layout of a page or content or where you can advertise even.
Awesome. That's I love that example of a house. Like I've owned several houses we're currently renting.
Yeah.
Because it's a better location. It's convenient for us, right? Like there are times where it makes a lot of sense. You don't have to worry about things. Absolutely. But like you said, there's a lot of limitations. There's things that I have to check with our landlord first before we can do, and other things that we just don't do. It's a great example of pros and cons. Noëlle, anything that you'd add to that?
Yeah, also I loved Gareth's analogy. And also, I always feel like ownership is a big thing because also, I know it's not likely for one of those renting solutions to go down or close their business, but if that would happen, your website would go down with that. So having that kind of control as well, that's something when I speak with my clients and they ask about pros and cons, I find owning your content and having so much impact on that your website is happy and healthy, like it's you collaborating with your host or whatever case may be. You're not at the whim of another company, which for me it's a big factor.
Awesome. Gareth, what's the next thing?
Yeah, so second up this is one of the big ones that I always think about is flexibility. And that kind of falls into two categories, I think, at least. It's how your website looks and also how it works. And when you're choosing an operating system, you want one that allows you to determine both. And there's actually a really good blog post we put out, I think last week on the WooCommerce blog, around your brand. And the flexibility here is you want to customize the look of your brand. As a business owner, you need to be recognizable. And your brand is not just a logo. Your brand is unique. It's from your colors to your fonts, the layout of the pages. So you're not really wanting to be locked into templates or layouts that you can't change. The kind that you kind of find on proprietary platforms or marketplaces, builder sites. You might also want to add extra functionality to your website, and that's what a flexible operating system does. It has lots of additional features. It's a great base for your business to grow. So if you want to offer multiple currencies or certain integrations with third parties like social media, email marketing. Maybe you want to hold raffles or giveaways or run your own crowdfunding schemes. Maybe you've got a project that you're super passionate about. You want to release your own coffee table book of photography, right? You take really good photographs. This is something that a flexible operating system can allow you to do. And the good thing about WordPress as an operating system is that it does have that kind of advanced functionality already in there. And this is not always available on other platforms. So if you choose an operating system with flexibility in mind, you'll have the ability to add all these kinds of powerful components that enable you to grow your business or expand your business at any time.
Let's touch on the other side of that for just a moment. So the downside to flexibility can be having too many choices kind of about what to do. And this is one of the things that we often see happen, where sometimes for some folks, it makes sense to start out on one of these proprietary platforms because it just maybe having the brand, maybe you're not sure. Like one of the things I love in the examples that we looked at today and previously is like how unique one Woo site can be from one to the next, because there's so much flexibility there to customize it. And you can really create this great brand experience that might not be valuable at the earliest stage in a process. In general, we think it is, we're biased, but it's worth calling that out. That flexibility also can mean there's a lot more choices, right? So that can be a little bit overwhelming. Noëlle, anything that you'd add?
Yeah, a big thing when it comes to me about flexibility, something that my clients love is that they can start small. They can start with a one-pager without e-commerce functionality or whatever the case may be. And then they can build up and they can go bigger and bigger and bigger on the same platform and add all this functionality. Often I find that people ask me, can we add that at a later stage? Will that be possible? And the answer is always yes. And that's what I love about WordPress. I feel like anything is possible. The question is more how, where with, say, a proprietary platform, they decide what's possible and what isn't. So, I love that kind of having that freedom with WordPress and WooCommerce.
That's awesome. Gareth, what about scalability?
Yeah, scalability is point number 3 here on our 4-point, or the 4 factors, I guess, of choosing an operating system. And Noelle's touched on it quite well there. You might be small now. Your business might not be massive, but that's not always going to be the case, or may not always be the case. You want an operating system that's going to grow with you. And, bigger shouldn't necessarily mean more expensive either. You think when you're growing, a lot of marketplaces and proprietary platforms often take a percentage of each sale, a transaction fee, which can affect your bottom line. And as your online store grows, it's important that you're able to maintain as much control as possible, so you can make the best decision for your specific situation. I think of there's a recent company I came across called Dryft, spelled with a Y, quite fancy, and they had a simple idea. They were 2 guys who went fishing with each other, friends who often that's how they would relax, and they had an idea. One day, they're walking down to the river, and they decided to start their own business around customizable, good-looking fishing waders, which you think, hey, that's kind of weird. But as you know in the series, finding your niche, right? And they started out small. They started in their garage from their lounges, and only after 3 years, business improved. They went full-time, and we had a chat with them, and they said to us, the first year after going full-time and moving into a dedicated space, our sales grew by over 50%. Now that's not a small amount. You think,
wow, yeah.
They've been with WordPress and WooCommerce from the start since 2013. And, one of the reasons that they've been able to grow so well is that they chose a platform that could accommodate them. Sure, their core business hasn't changed, but the scale of it has. And they've been able to make the necessary improvements in their online store as they've grown. And I think that's such a cool real world example of starting small, focusing on that niche, and then because they considered the factors even at that early stage, they've been able to accelerate the growth in the way that they would like. So I think scalability is always going to be a factor. Noëlle mentioned, can this do this? Can this platform do this at a later stage? It's so beneficial and so helpful. Sure, you may need to upgrade to a host that can handle more traffic, or get a couple more extensions for the functionality. But at its core, WordPress and WooCommerce, it really gives you that opportunity. I don't know how you feel, Noëlle, as a developer. I'm sure you've probably got some more examples or some more insight there.
Yeah, I would say for people that I speak with, they say the fees are a big thing. And like you mentioned, yes, you need to have hosting that can handle volume. And yes, you may need to add an extension, but it's not like you're paying a fee for every single order. So you pay that extension, you pay your $100 a year, or whatever the case may be. And that's that, regardless of how many orders you're making. I think that's it. That's when people want to scale. That makes a big difference.
That's awesome. Gareth, what about the last one?
Yeah, so open web support. This is, as we've said a few times, this is something that I think the three of us on here are very passionate about. And that's kind of the reason why after all these years, I'm still with Woo. And for those of you going, what is the open web? What is open web support? The open web is based on the idea that the internet should be free and accessible to everyone. And a big part of this is open source software. These are tools that are available for free to everyone, written and maintained by volunteers. And we care about the open web, and you may not at this stage, but I want to tell you why you should consider it, at least, because the open web supports accessibility. There's a low barrier to entry, so entrepreneurs with a great idea, they can get their products online quickly and inexpensively. 2 new features can be added democratically. This is a big one, right? So when someone sees a need for a new feature, any developer can add it. You don't have to wait for some big corporation to make a decision in some boardroom. If there's something you dream of for your shop, the chances are high that someone already has a solution. Yeah. And if not, it's easy to find a developer that can create it for you. There's a big ecosystem around this as well. And thirdly, free help is available from a vast community of developers and users. And because the open web is just that, it's open to all, right? It means that many people have experience working with the software, and often they're happy and willing to share what they've learned in the spirit of the open web. It's the internet is like it becomes kind of like a big user guide for open source software. And it means that there's no gateway to your products as well, right? You've got direct control, full control over things like search engine optimization, customer messaging, and advertising. It's really a powerful tool for websites and for online stores as well. And Jonathan, I know it's something you're specifically passionate about. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think one of the reasons why it's like, well, why do people give free help? Well, why are there volunteers? And as I've thought about this and I've asked and sort of leaned into it, that's one of the major factors. Some people are just really nice, and that's great. One of the major factors is that because it's open source, there's a sense of shared ownership. When you choose to use open source software, WordPress, WooCommerce, like you are buying into something. You now have a stake in it. And whereas with proprietary platforms, there's a difference there. Big advantages, but that's not yours, it's theirs. Whereas with open source software and this open web, it's yours. You're now a part of it. All right, so let's start to bring this in. We love open source software. I am a big fan of also the proprietary platforms and the value that they bring. They have a great spot. At the end of the day, though, I want a healthy open web. And our hope today was to give just some factors that you can help you weigh the pros and cons and decide what's ultimately right for you. So, Noëlle, what guidance do you have? What guidance? How do we want to sort of bring this in? If someone's weighing the factors, how would we guide them towards a decision?
Yeah, so when we've looked at the criteria before, there's one that stands out is the WordPress. So it's the WordPress and WooCommerce combination. So to determine whether or not that's right for you, you can look at, valuing community. If you want to be part of what Gareth just talked about, the open internet, if you want to be a bit of an owner of it all, if you want to contribute to it all and make it a better place, I think you'll be very happy in the WordPress WooCommerce space. If your WordPress WooCommerce can be a bit of a learning curve, if you're willing to learn, there are so many people and resources out there to help you. I mean, when I started out, Gareth, I became a developer because at first I was a merchant. I had an idea for a drop shipping store. I swear I didn't even know how to use Facebook, okay? And I had this idea and I had no resources. All I had was Google. And I Googled all the things. And there were wonderful people in Facebook groups who donated that time to me. Like without them, I wouldn't be where I am now, So it's a huge one. If you're willing to learn, there's people to help you learn for sure.
Yeah.
And then there's putting content first, because WordPress was built as a publishing platform. So it's a very suitable place to publish your content that will help you connect to customers and showcase your expertise.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. So there are a lot of factors to consider. If valuing community, if you're not willing to learn, like if community is not a big deal, if you're not willing to learn, or content really isn't a priority, you just have to get the products out there, then that it might make sense to use a marketplace instead, or it might make sense to use a proprietary platform because you don't have time to sort of figure it out, right? And you can always come back if you end up going that route too, that we're going to still be here. So, but if you do value those things, the community, and you're willing to learn, and content first matters, then WordPress and WooCommerce are a fantastic choice. And we'd love to support you in doing that. Awesome. Gareth, any last thoughts?
No, I think you summed that up pretty well there, especially when you mentioned content at the end there. That's even something we see with enterprise agencies that we speak to. Even at that level of e-commerce, they often say how important content is to the success of even some of the big stores that they're building. So I would encourage folks not to discount that. Content is important, and I think WordPress is a great place for it.
It's also getting better all the time. New versions of WordPress and the approach to content is improving with we now have this concept of blocks, and being able to have content that's really flexible, where you have content and then you have store elements, etc. So that's good. Gareth, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise, and it's always great to have you. And we'll have to do this again.
Anytime.
A special thanks to Anna, our producer behind the scenes, helping make things happen, and to all of you for watching and being a part of this community. That's a wrap for now. See you next week.
Hey, thanks for watching. After the live show, we set aside time for question and answers, and I'd love to have you join us next time. Go to woocommerce.com/live and sign up. It's free. You'll get notified when we go live, and you'll be part of the live audience where you could ask questions and hang out with us after. I look forward to seeing you there.